Hey everyone, and welcome back to Season 2 of Professor's Play, the show where you can get just a pixel of deep thinking with your mostly nonsensical video game discussions. This is episode 24, and I am Professor Phil Chavot, he's Professor John Adams, and he's Professor Brandon West, and together we are professors who play video games.
Sometimes.
We try.
Some of us more than others.
There's more context to that we'll get to.
There's definitely an uneven distribution curve here.
You're breaking podcast etiquette. I need to talk to you guys first before you respond to me. Brandon, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing okay, Phil. Thank you.
That's good. John, how are you?
I got a haircut.
He did get a haircut.
My hair is shorter, less scraggly. You need a haircut for sure.
Man, I'm flattered, but you might have to blink at some point. For those of you who can't see, Brandon is staring at me, and today
I'm waiting for the cue of when I'm allowed to speak.
Oh, I already talked to you.
So now I can just speak whenever.
That's how it works.
Kind of, yeah.
What is this place? We really do like each other, just to be clear.
Today we are recording our second episode of Fire Emblem Engage. So it's our first impressions episode. So there will be some spoilers for the first
Half the game. We'll try to keep it that.
So just a quick refresher, right? So Fire Emblem is a tactical turn-based RPG. It's a high fantasy universe, beautiful anime people. There's some elements of social simulation in there as well.
Yep.
Less than the last one, but still more than usual for a Fire Emblem style. And the best way to think about it is Fire Emblem is Game of Thrones level intrigue, but with anime people, and you get to control the battles as if it's a chessboard almost. The games have been around for a while, since 1990, which is the first one that came out, Shadow Dragon and Blade of Light. And if you haven't watched or listened to our last episode, I recommend doing so at least for the last 15 minutes, because John tries to guess names of Fire Emblems and gets all of them wrong.
Every single one.
Even though John has played several Fire Emblems, I made up some, but even the ones that weren't made up, he called them wrong.
The shame.
It was a good time. So we'll jump into our first impressions and how far do we get here. So there was some overlap with with what we liked and disliked about the game. So first, I got to chapter 14. I actually got to chapter 15 last night. So I just recovered one more emblem. So if you remember, this game works with the MacGuffins in this game are rings that contain the spirits.
Yeah.
A consciousness of
or of an alternate dimensional person.
Which is the main characters of previous Fire Emblems. They exist in emblems and rings, and you get to call on them to help you battle.
But it is important to note that they have not been trapped in these rings, and these rings don't represent them in their universes. No. They're Control C, Control V's of their.
They're like a magician did a ritual to get the spirit of the strongest warrior of a different realm into this ring.
Exactly that. Yeah. I would actually love to know the history of
how
these rings
I need to know that,
came to be, because whoever did that is far more impressive than any of the characters we have here.
I would assume it was a divine dragon of past, 5,000 years ago or something like that.
Well, and not to give spoilers, because not too much of a spoilers, but all of the rings are aware that they are rings, yes, and aware of each other. And
they like to keep they like it when you polish their rings.
Which is there's some weirdness there. Yep. It's as weird as you think it is.
It is pretty weird.
They can feel it physically when you polish them.
Yeah, no, I got it.
And if you polish it hard, which is an option in the game, they kind of complain a little bit. They're like, "Oh, that was a little hard."
Or they make.
But you need to do it
noises,
because they feel better about you if you do.
Yeah.
So there's a reward in there. There's a quid pro quo.
Yeah, there's a little bit of.
That's the weirdest mechanic.
That's the weirdest mechanic in the game. There's a little bit of fan service going on there. And then the other thing is that the rings, and you don't know this yet, but at the end of chapter 18, all of the spirits of the rings that you have gather together, and they start talking. They start saying, "Should we do the thing? You mean the thing we're only allowed to do once? We've never done it before. Nobody's ever done it before. But this thing could be the thing that saves the world.
The thing.
But what if it's not the thing that saves the world? And what if we waste it on this? Shouldn't we wait till the world falls into true danger?" And they're like, "We don't know. Let's gather the other rings and talk with them about it." So I don't know what that's about, but
isn't it the thing every 1,000 years they get to engage with each other or something and get uber powerful and you get a nuke?
Yeah, there's some sort of wish mechanic that they've never used before, that they're currently having a little ring tribal council about.
I don't know if they never used before, but I know.
No, they say we've never used this in history.
Because they say, like, every 1,000 years they're supposed to get together to, like, do something.
To do something,
Yeah.
but they've never used this nuclear option.
Okay, fair enough.
And they're trying to decide if, like, Sombron is a big enough, who is the evil dragon,
Yeah.
is a big enough threat to warrant using it.
So that was a nice aside about the emblem rings. We're going to talk a little more about what you can do with the emblem rings, or what they can do for weird phrasing, later on. But we all agreed here that the map variation and the tactics are pretty cool.
They're great.
So what I like the emblem mechanics. I like how you can basically make some of your units go Super Saiyan in different ways, at different points in the map, and you have to like calculate not only who you want to have that power, but also when you're going to use it in the map, because most of them only get to use once.
It feels very similar in a lot of ways to like Pokemon's like Gigantamax.
Yeah.
Where it's like they're going to be super powerful. They're going to be powerful for just 3 turns.
Yes.
Pick your 3 turns.
Which typically means you use it as soon as possible, but not always.
I think usually you use
In
it
the game, not in
the game.
the meta.
Yeah, I think you use it as soon as possible.
Yeah. As soon as you get the matchup you want as soon as possible. Like the first turn you can, right? Which I didn't do that a couple of times, but in this game there's a little more nuance to that, especially for the ones that don't get to use it more than once.
Yes.
Because like you can recover the emblem energy pretty quickly depending on which unit you're using, but like the ones that are more shield units, they don't necessarily recover it fast.
Because you have to kill people to recover this energy.
Yeah.
And use it again. Yep.
Murder. But the map themselves, we had some. The only Fire Emblem I've played before, well, I played 3 Houses and I played like the first one ever, and the maps are just. In Fire Emblem, this is or 3 Houses. This was one of the main complaints of the game was that the maps were typically like very similar or not interesting enough, and also the objectives were always route the entire army.
Right.
Where in this game, there are objectives that are like get your one unit to this position, or like protect these crystals, or run away. There's more variation in the objective and in the maps, which I think is like it adds more flavor, and it's pretty cool.
I think it's nice, yeah. I mean, I will still say that like Route the Enemy is my favorite map type, but it's nice to have not every map be that.
Yeah, I like when sometimes like it's just defeat this one guy.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to route the enemy, and if you can get there without routing the enemy, that works as well.
Yeah.
What I don't like about routing the enemy is that whenever you have like a mini boss or a boss, and this happened in 3 Houses a lot, is like you kill the general of the army, and then it's like, all right, go kill all their lancers that are still around. And there's one guy in the back of the map that's like a healer, and I'm like, all right, I guess I'm gonna bring my entire army to this guy's doorstep, basically. Which
on the other side, it gives you a chance to like collect all the stuff around the map.
Well, you can still do that even if you don't route him.
In this game, one of the problems is that sometimes the enemy is so big and so powerful that like I get into a fight with them and I have to finish that fight, and then I can't go back and check out other cool stuff. Because like once I kill him, it's over, and I can't afford not to be like focused on him or her.
I see what you're saying, but I think that's the difficulty too.
That is
like you're probably not supposed to get everything on the map.
Yeah.
Like unless you like are really trying and splitting up for strategies and stuff.
That's fair.
So that was kind of cool. Or that's my favorite map, and we'll talk about this later. But I think it kind of reverses the roles of what typically your main character does in games. So I thought it was pretty interesting. And then we also there was a dislike between Brandon and I. I'm sure John shared this a little bit, but it is, and we talked about this last week or last episode. But it is quite corny.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. The writing is maybe. And it's not like it's a really high bar, but the writing is probably the worst of all the Fire Emblem games I've played.
I think the writing is worse than 3 Houses, because in 3 Houses it was corny, but it made more sense than it does here.
Well, and in 3 Houses they were all like young teenagers.
Yes.
And here it still feels like they're young teenagers, but they're supposed to be like heirs to the throne.
Which happened in 3 Houses too, but like even when you talk to Edelgard and Dimitri, they had specific speaking styles, and Claude had something else.
Right.
Which I guess Fogado is supposed to be in this game, but.
Right.
His still feels forced, and Claude's didn't necessarily.
I agree.
And part of that, I think, is, and this is my second dislike, part of that is because I think you don't get enough time to get to know them.
Yeah.
So, like, if in 3 Houses, if you think, Dimitri is like, not a real character or whatever, like, I'm just using an example, I never thought that, but if you hang out with them, and there's different ways of doing that, you get to know more of their motivations and why they're the way they are.
Right.
Like, Lysithea is a good example. She's always, like, yelling and complaining about stuff, then you figure out that, like, she has the equivalent of like 2 Super Saiyan powers inside of her, and that means she's gonna die in like 5 years.
Right.
So she has to like learn everything she can now, basically.
Yeah, and they do have less of those characterizations tied to the characters in general. So, like, in this game, Alchrist has this, like, ultra humble, I'm sorry for everything, constantly apologizing personality, and maybe I just haven't hit the right conversation, but we haven't gotten any reasons to why he's just lacks confidence.
I've gotten like some, but yeah, it's
Three Houses had a lot more like, let's dig into their trauma.
Yeah. But also, like, in Three Houses, because you had more opportunities to do stuff, and because it really felt like the characters knew each other, like, the conversations before battles in Three Houses were they're all friends, and they all talk to each other about, like, what they're afraid of and stuff. And in this game, they kind of, like, 3 of them are friends, but the other 12 are people they just picked up and brought to the army.
It's new.
So they don't really have those conversations. So even outside of the things you had to do to, like, discover more background, which is what you do now.
Right.
The things in general that happened as part of the story, depending what story you chose, you got to know more about the characters.
Yeah, here it gets used a lot more as, like, an expositionary tool too.
Yes.
Where you'll be like, hey, how are you today? And they're like, oh, I was just watching the sunsets. And they're like, oh, do you like sunsets? They're like, yes. In my homeland, the sunsets are considered the most beautiful ever. The palace overlooks the sea, and that is why the sunsets are so great, because the dolphins will jump on the shore. And, like, that's the depth. We're getting, like, world building through dialogue, and it doesn't work because you don't get to see those
some
things.
Characters, like, even characters I don't like in Three Houses, like Raphael.
Yeah.
Like, he has deep motivations for how he is the way he is.
Right.
Like, they're all kind of, they get more into the deep stuff, and even the overworld stuff gives us more information into, like, their deepness.
Yeah.
Their depth. But in this game, that's the thing. I don't think you have enough social time. Like, there should be a couple of parties in the Somniel where they all get together. Instead of me having to force relationships between people to find out what's happening. So I've seen Alchrist and Diamant's, like, they're brothers. They're C and they're B.
Yeah.
And they talk. It's basically Alchrist feels this way because Diamant has always been, like, the older, stronger brother.
Right.
So he's always just felt like, no matter, he refers to himself as a Prince of Brodia, not the Prince of Brodia.
Right.
Or any Brodian Prince, which is, like, interesting. And Diamant tries to be like, no, dude, you're also good at stuff. And he's like, that's just you being your great self, being magnanimous, kind of thing.
Right.
So I think he's just growing up in the shadow of 2 great men for his whole life.
I suppose it feels a little hollow.
Jade's is the most hollow ever I've seen.
I haven't done anything with Jade.
C and B she get attacked by bandits, and Alir's like, oh my god, are you okay? And she's like, yes, I'm okay. You don't have to check up on me all the time. She's like, yeah, I know you're strong. I just just want to help, and that's it.
Interesting. Maybe A will be better.
Yeah, so they all feel a little more forced than the others, and because they're not all in the school together, you're picking people up at random times.
Yeah.
They don't know each other, actually.
Right.
So, like, they don't talk to each other as much.
Right.
In random situations, so you don't get to know them as units. You don't get to know them as people as much. Because, like, when in Three Houses, you're helping them all grow, so you really know how
you're teaching them.
Yeah, you really know how each unit works, and this, you kind of really have to dig into the menus to find this out.
Oh, and the menus.
The menus are clunky. Which I also have as a dislike here, because, for example, in Three Houses, when you want to cook something for your troops, there's a cook. You go to the cook and you're like, okay, you first pick the people you want to, like, share a meal with. And then you can tell by what they like, and then you pick a meal. So it tells you before you pick the meal what they like.
Yeah.
Right? In this game, you have to pick who you want to share a meal with, and then you have to pick what the meal is. So at this point, you already clicked on 3 things to pick people, and then you have to see, like, oh wait, neither of them like the thing that the cook is good at making. So I have to go back 3 menus.
Yep.
And yeah, it's just a lot of clicking. Let's see. Oh, and John, you had a couple. We talked about the protagonists being less fleshed out.
Yeah, so I actually, my biggest complaint, I really like the game in general, and it's wonderful, but going into this character development, I think that these are, like, the weakest protagonists we've seen in Fire Emblem games. So here we just have Alir, and Alir can be a male or female, you get to choose at the beginning, but it's a person with dichromatic hair, half blue, half red, and they are the son or daughter of the Divine Dragon. And that is kind of their personality. Like, they wake up and people are like, oh, you're a god. And you're like, I'm a god? And they're like, yeah. And you're like, all right, well, then I guess I'll be a nice god. And they're like, wonderful. And that's kind of the depth. That's where we're at. Like, everything that we interact with people Somebody would go to you and be like, "Oh man, do you like chicken nuggets?" You're like, "I don't know, but I'm willing to try them for you because I'm a nice person."
And part of it is too because she has amnesia, or they have amnesia.
They do,
Yeah.
which is an interesting plot development.
Classic plot device, yeah.
But it doesn't really work here. And we compare this to others. So, like, in Three Houses, we had 3 separate protagonists. You're the professor who is, like, a vessel for you to, like, be a part of.
That's where I have a bone to pick with you about
Okay.
Because I think Byleth is by far the weakest protagonist.
Yes,
because
Byleth's not a protagonist.
You can't say that.
I can.
I mean, you can't say that, but you'd be wrong.
No. Byleth is not the protagonist. the protagonist is the house that you choose.
No, I'm with you in terms of like how the storytelling works,
Yeah.
but Byleth is, for all intents and purposes, how protagonists work in Fire Emblem. You control him, so he's the Marth, he's the Ike, he's the Alir.
Also, what makes Byleth better than Alir?
Byleth doesn't talk,
But
has
Byleth
no lines.
can respond and make choices. You get to make those choices.
What do you
can
mean?
choose, like when you're having tea with people, you can choose which
Yeah, but that's the
response
mechanic of
they
the
take.
game.
He's a vessel, but he's not really a protagonist. The protagonists
He is,
in
though.
Three Houses are the leaders of the house. But let's go back past Three Houses. Let's cut out Byleth too. If we go to like Erica and Ephraim, right?
Oh, sure.
There are
yeah.
these like twin siblings that have like a deep bond with each other that are working to like capture their father's kingdom, and Erica has a personality and Ephraim has a personality. If you go to Path of Radiance with Ike is like the son of a bandit war leader that then has to watch his father's tragic death and is sort of dealing with that trauma while he's going through it, and he's like kind of a hothead. He rushes into people. Like if you go with like even as far back as Marth, who's like a classic prince, Marth is dealing with like how you like run a country and how you bring people together. Sigurd has this like really interesting play with his wife who gets captured by dark mages, and then he has to decide like does love for her or love for the country win out.
Interesting, yeah.
They're like interesting challenges and protagonists, and Alir just feels here. Like, honest to goodness, if Alir wasn't here and his mother was still here, we would have the exact same series of events happen.
I don't disagree with that, but I don't think that's part of that's personality. That's like I think Alir has more personality than Byleth because some of the like whatever support events, like conversations they have, they feel like when they started giving you more than just yes, no in Pokemon, for example, and you could be a little sassy.
Right.
At least they have a little sass going on. Sometimes they'll be like, "Oh, I don't understand why you would do that. That seems pretty." Like they'll like be real. Byleth says literally nothing the entire game.
I let Byleth off the hook because that's not what he's for.
But that.
That's
what he should be for.
You're supposed to choose a house. That house has a leader, and then that leader determines the pacing and characterization
Then they
of the
shouldn't
story.
have Byleth. They should have Edelgard, Dimitri, and Claude be your playable characters.
Byleth is not a protagonist, he's a camera. Alir is supposed to be a protagonist.
But so is Byleth.
No, Byleth is a camera through which you view the rest.
If we went to intelligence systems like, is Byleth protagonist, they'd say no.
Yes.
No way.
I think the writer would definitely say, we didn't write him as a protagonist.
Byleth,
you get to choose your protagonist.
I agree
one of
that
those
you write him as a protagonist, but he's supposed to be one.
No, he's
So
not.
if they're failures doesn't mean he's not supposed to be one.
It's like in Skyrim, your Skyrim character isn't the protagonist in Skyrim. They're just there experiencing whatever you decide to do. You're the protagonist.
Yeah, but Byleth is
the
extreme of a like blank slate character.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean he's not a blank slate character protagonist.
No,
because Alir is also blank slate.
You're the protagonist through Byleth. With Alir, you're not. You're not meant to be Alir. You're meant to be Byleth.
You're meant to be Alir as much as you're meant to be Marth and the other characters.
I know. I'm saying that's the problem. You are meant to be Alir in this storyline, but in Byleth's storyline, you're not meant to be Byleth. Byleth is meant to be you.
That doesn't mean he's not a protagonist.
No, he's a vessel.
For protagonism.
No, for your choices.
Brandon, would you care to weigh in?
Oh, hi. Well, I wasn't gonna say like I'm not sure I agree, John.
Wow, I see how it is.
Well, I mean,
I think your argument is valid because he's such a bad protagonist that the others feel like protagonists. Like I love Three Houses so much, but Byleth is objectively like
not a protagonist.
Not a protagonist.
Not a protagonist.
Because of writing, not because of mechanics. Yeah. Sorry, Brandon, you were saying stuff.
I was.
Yeah, you said you disagree with John, which has keep going, please.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I don't think a silent protagonist is not a protagonist. I think a lot of protagonists are purposely cast as blank slates for us to cast ourselves in. Because whatever character you're playing as is your avatar in the game, right?
Well, even Joker and you in Persona 4, right?
Right.
Or and 5, Persona 5 and 4, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But we have to be really careful about trying to say that the protagonist and the avatar are entirely separate entities. They're not. They're layered into each other, and that you have to interface.
A lot of schools of research on this, but the main point here is that Alear is a weak protagonist.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I'm not arguing with that either.
No, I'm just bringing this all into agreement.
Yeah.
I'm finding the lowest common ground I can find.
Yeah, I think that is the lowest common ground.
Alear is a weak protagonist,
I'm here
but it doesn't take me away from. I'm not not enjoying the game because of it.
Well, I agree, and I will say that that's one of the magics of Fire Emblem is that the story is important, the characterizations are important, they make it fun, but they're not the game.
No, the game is...
You could play this game completely without any story, and I think it would still be a fun game.
Yeah.
Like chess doesn't have a story, and it's still a good time.
Yeah.
And so the weakness or strength of Fire Emblem's story does increase the quality of the game, but I think that even if you took out the story completely, you would only hamper it so far. I think it would still be a playable game just because the Fire Emblem as a mechanic.
Because the tactics are so well done.
The tactics are so well done. It's a fun idea and fun game that the story seems additive.
And weapon durability is gone, which you like as well.
Oh, so happy. So in the old games, Brandon...
Up until 3 houses.
Up until 3 houses, your swords only had 20 hits that you could do.
You can fix them.
Yeah.
But it cost... The better the sword, the more it costs to fix.
Back in the olden days, you couldn't even fix them. You just had to buy a new sword, so you had to treat them kind of like staffs, where you knew how many charges of a silver sword you'd have, and you bought another one to back it up.
Yeah.
It was meant to stop you, and I do get this, from a game design perspective.
Meant to stop what I do.
Yeah, from parking your strongest unit right in the middle of a choke point and just letting them basically hammer everything forever.
Which is what I do with 2 of my units that avoid every single hit, basically.
But I think what it does is it makes the game feel more impersonal, and it makes the weapons feel less connected to the characters. So in past games, I treated weapons like health potions, where I was constantly selling the bad ones, buying new fresh ones.
I would only bring the good weapons in battles that I knew were going to be hard.
Yep, or this is the final battle with the boss, and it would lead to that sort of hoarding mechanic you get in games like Skyrim, where you're I don't want to use this one here because I might need it later. I'm just going to use regular silver swords. This one doesn't have that, and so it actually invests me in the upgrade mechanics a lot more.
Yeah.
Because I'm I really do want a +5 silver dagger because there's a character that could do real work with a +5 silver dagger.
Right.
And then the only other complaint I have about this game, and I will bring it up, is that you are told that your protagonist is the Divine Dragon, and we know that other dragons become dragons. And in the Fire Emblem series, dragons as characters is a thing. In Fire Emblem Awakening...
Dragons are basically a adjacent human race.
An adjacent human race. And in Fire Emblem Awakening, they're a playable class. You would have a dragon gym that you only had 20 uses of, but you would use the dragon gym, your character would turn into a giant dragon, take up the whole screen, and you do a Z move attack, basically, and wipe out somebody else. They were great. Why can't Alear turn into a dragon? Why do you tell me I'm a dragon and then not let me be a dragon?
I think it'll be. I think maybe people that already play this are you will at some point.
You will.
So they're
it's coming up at the end.
Yeah. But I think it's going to be similar to what Byleth happened when he turns into the awakened one. We can call whatever Sothis to fight with him. Basically, as an emblem, he gets more powers. Right. I think it's going to be similar because that's his version of dragon transformation. I think it's at one point you're going to be able to morph into dragon for one turn or something like that.
But it bothers me that it hasn't even come up in the story yet.
No, why? Well, actually...
We know the villain can turn into a dragon.
And has.
Because he turns into a dragon and chases it out of a cathedral.
But how did he turn into a dragon, John? He had to eat a royalty member.
Oh.
Remember this?
Is that
so
how?
he had to consume the blood of royalty, and then he didn't have enough, and then he ate another one, and that made him even more powerful. So maybe dragon transformation you need energy from something else. And maybe noble blood is the best way to go about it. Or if you're a divine dragon, maybe it's prayer. I don't know.
Okay.
But so there might be something there. But I think that it's consistent with the game that dragons aren't always dragons. But I do think it's weird in the main story. No one has been even Vander, who's you're a caretaker, hasn't been you can probably turn into a dragon at some point.
I'm just telling you, the minute I got chased out of that cathedral by the giant dark dragon, I would have been
yeah.
Like if he can do it, like it seems like a real useful friggin' ability.
And they
haven't even talked about it. Nobody's been like,
unless so if you have your side story with Marin. So Marin is one of the characters who I don't like. I have some small issues with her as a character in terms of like she wears like basically an animal costume.
yeah, she's a furry.
Yeah. But she's really good at. She's a really good unit, and she's a
Amazing.
wolf knight, which means that she dodges everything and can hit death with silver daggers.
She rides on a
damage.
wolf.
Yeah.
She's a rogue that rides on a wolf.
Yeah, she
Dope.
She can.
Definitely not designed to be the coolest character.
Yeah,
It was pretty cool.
Yeah, she can do a lot of damage, especially if you put her at choke points. She's a monster. But if you do her side storyline, which I did because I sometimes have her and Aaliyah in battle, like moving together because they have such high avoidance.
Sure.
As like a guerrilla group, and the first one she goes to Aaliyah and says like I'm really interested in rare. She's like a David Attenborough type. She's a zoologist basically. So she goes to Aaliyah. She's like I'm really interested in rare critters, and Aaliyah's like you're calling me a critter. She's like I'm also calling you rare, which you are. And so she asks you questions like, what's your routine? What do you eat? Like, because you're a dragon, so like, what's different about you? And she's like, nothing, I guess. And I was like, we're really getting to the crux of like, why are you even called a dragon?
That's the irritation.
Yeah.
If nothing is different about you,
Yeah.
how are you? Yeah.
She's just more powerful than a regular human. Is the thing. Like, and then at some point you assume
Kind
she's able to
of,
become a
but
dragon.
honestly, I mean, Louis is just as powerful as I am.
Oh no, my Aaliyah is my best unit for sure.
Oh, is it?
Apparently, I was reading. We're gonna talk more about like the actual emblem rings in the next episode, like why like they exist as they do and which ones we like the best.
Sweet.
But I was looking this up already, and apparently, the reason why Binding and Blazing Blade are so hard, they're both Roy's games, is
Right.
because apparently Roy as a unit is terrible.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So like people see him in Smash Bros and think he's like fine and cool.
Yeah.
But apparently he's like
In his
known
games.
for being the worst protagonist in terms of like ability.
Amazing.
And he can't upgrade his class until like the last chapter, so he's just like maxed out and worse than anyone until then. So you can't really, and you have to have him in your army, so you're always like having a handicap basically.
That's perfect.
Yeah. So that's why in this game they talk about like this game. That's why they gave him the holdout ability, which like means that he can what's the
Bide.
Yeah, he has sturdy.
Sturdy.
He has sturdy.
Oh,
Basically.
nice.
So people can hit him as much as you want, but he only will ever go down to 1 because apparently in his game he died a lot.
That's beautiful.
It's great stuff. But you
That's
see,
not even quite sturdy though. Sturdy only procs the first.
only 1 hit, but the idea is basically he can survive 1 round. Yeah.
Oh, I
Yeah,
see.
yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one hit point immortal.
Yeah, he can, or he has like a focus sash basically, which is
Yeah.
also 1 hit. But yeah. So as you can see about the spirited debate, we are really enjoying it. There's a lot of stuff to talk about.
Man.
Right. So
It's a great game.
we had some overall agreement on the story and the characters. Right. It's pretty basic, but the side characters are mostly good, even though not a lot of depth to them. So I want to give you an example of what happened to me. So I'm pleasantly surprised with some of the character depth, but some of them have just like built to nothing. So for example, I've been working on because I use I kind of like try to build a relationship with the units I use in battle, right?
Yeah.
So I use Unica a lot because she's a thief, and I'm going to upgrade it to the Wolf Knight here pretty soon.
Yep.
So I'll have 2 Wolf Knights in my army, which will be awesome.
It'll be amazing.
And
That's the way to go.
her whole thing is that like she's a really gifted actress, and she's from like a peasant past base. But not only that, she was an assassin. It's implied. She used to murder and steal for a living. And now she's all cheerful, uses like all these weird slangs to talk to people. She's always like kind of yelling.
Yeah.
And a couple of the characters call her out on it. Like Panette and I think Citrine will like be like, I know that this is not your real you. And Alir does too, but Alir is basically like, you don't have to tell me who you used to be if you don't want to. And then in the rank A, and I was like, oh, I really want to know what happened. In the rank
let's find
A,
out.
Unica goes to Alir and she's like, hey, I'm ready to tell you what happened. And Alir's like, okay. And she's like, and Unica's like, this is really hard for me, but, and she starts talking, and Alir's like, you know what? You don't have to tell me.
What? What a rug pull.
Yeah, so you don't have to tell me. I like who you are now, and if that's who you want to be for now, for forever, then I don't need to know who you were in the past. She's like, wow, thank you so much, and they leave.
Wow, that was a good response by Alir, and the response you'd want to give to somebody in real life, but
Yeah.
not in a story where I'm
Yeah,
trying
it's
to
like,
figure out
yeah,
the
let me-
past.
Yeah,
how people's
exactly. She should have been like, I really appreciate it, but I still want to tell you.
Yes.
Like that's what I thought was going to happen, but she's like, I really appreciate it, but I still want to tell you. I won't though. and it's over. And I was like, now you're rank A? You don't know anything about each other. Yeah. I think the ranks also don't change as much as in Three Houses.
As in Three Houses, yeah.
The Three Houses rank A was like, you had rank S too, I think.
Because you could marry.
Yeah, rank A and S in Three Houses was like, you knew their deep darkest
trauma. Yeah. Well, that's what made good.
It is. So yeah, I like Chloe a lot because Chloe's voiced my favorite voice actress in Japanese. She's the voice actress of, if you watch anime in Japanese, of Yor from Spy Family and Shinobu from Demon Slayer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I like Alchris because I think I get his whole being like really like self-deprecating and like really down on himself, even though he's like probably like a top 3 unit in the game.
He does have a very clear character trait.
Yes.
Which is like, I don't think highly of myself.
And I think I understand. I've seen more of his like side stuff, so I understand more why it happens. And I used to like Unica, and now I'm just like, okay, I guess we'll never find out what your past. Maybe I didn't write your past. I don't know.
Some of Ivy's interactions are quite good.
Ivy's good as well.
Yeah, Ivy's a great unit. So she's a dragon rider mage.
Yeah.
So she can like throw fireballs from the back of a dragon. But she's the villain in
It's a good twist.
In the first half of the story, helping the Dark Dragon come to power, and then the Dark Dragon comes to power and like eats her dad, and she's like, oh, maybe this was a terrible idea, and so she has to like reconcile with the fact that she like brought the evil to power and now needs to lead a country to salvation, basically.
That she needs to lead an army against her own country so she can take it back. Basically.
So she can take it back and make it what it needs to be.
Yeah.
And while she's doing this, so her country has been at war with the other kind of good guy countries for a long while. And so her conversations with
because her country, the religion in her country is not worshipping you, the divine dragon. It's worshipping the fell dragon.
Right.
So they have a different religion that's opposed to yours. So when you talk to her, she's like, actually, ever since I was a little girl, I thought that you were the better deity.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Have you done her little side things?
No.
So her side things, yeah. She'll like come to Alir and be like, the first one she's like, I'm just staring, and she kind of gives hints that she's staring not because she hates Alir, even though Alir hates that. And then when you get to the A, she's like, I've actually, since I've been a little girl, worshipped you in secret in the castle in Lucia.
Oh,
because I thought you were the better deity, because the fell dragon preaches hate and like getting ahead of each other, and that's kind of what our family always did, and I always thought that was not good. Because it was like not a warrior religion, but like a deception religion based, like power religion, and you are more of like a traditional love religion.
Yeah.
And she was like, I would worship you in secret, so when I got to meet you, it was, I didn't want to fight you, but I knew I had to, and now that I get to be on your side, it's also still confusing, but I'm glad I'm on this side now. And it's like a real interesting twist.
And he responds, are you sure I can't turn into a dragon like that guy?
Yeah.
I'm way lamer. No.
Yeah. He responds like, well, thank you for worshipping me, I guess. And she's like, you're welcome.
Well, her conversations with the other kings and nobles are really interesting, too. So she talks, I really like her conversations
it's a weird
with
power
Brodia.
Dynamic.
Yeah. Because you've got the king of Brodia, and they've been at war forever, and now these two children have come, and they've decided to fight on the same team, and so you have this weird, like, when I recapture Elusia, we're going to reconcile what our countries were, and, like, they're planning the bright
That part's
future.
real cool.
It's real cool.
Yeah.
I love the interaction between all the lords
way
more than I care about Alir.
Yeah, those
Alir
are
is
real cool.
Whatever.
Because Alir's and Ash are typically like, you're the divine dragon, I worship you, you're so cool, or like, you're the divine dragon, help me do this thing.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's as deep as it goes. And also, all the other people get, like, really cool classes. The monarchs, they get specialized custom classes.
Yeah.
So she doesn't just become a wyvern rider, she becomes a lindworm, which is, like, this special...
What's the class that Alchris gets?
You see, I thought it was. I wasn't reading it carefully, and so I wrote down on our script, it was tour d'elite, which I assumed meant, like, an elite tourist, or an elite, like...
It means an elite tour. Like a tour that's really good.
Yeah, like a tour. That's
but it's tireur d'elite, which means elite shooter.
I apologize to our French listeners.
He's and his brother is like Sisiksa, which means successor.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was funny when I read it, and I was like, oh, okay.
Phenomenal. Yeah.
So my least favorite characters are probably I like Alfred's like talking to other people, but Alfred himself I don't like because he's always like, oh no, I gotta keep my obsession with muscles in the background. It's like, what is wrong?
His whole court is like people that are obsessed with like getting swole. That's like their personality.
Yes.
And I stopped hanging out with them pretty quickly.
Yeah, especially like, which is fine. Like it's not super fun, but it's fine. But like, Etty is also like that, and Etty's tiny.
Right.
she's like a tiny archer, so she doesn't even have that much strength, and she's in the background anyway. She's like, oh, I need to go like get some pumps in. I'm like, but what is happening?
And like the joke is that another character that comes with him called Boucheron is like big and beefy, but he's big and beefy just like naturally, genetically.
So Alfred keeps coming up to me like, how do you do it? And he's like, stop staring at me and touching my arm.
He's like, I just go and I eat regular food and I walk along the creek. And they're like, but I walk along the creek and I'm not big and swole.
Yeah.
And that's their entire personality and dynamic. So it's weird. But he also has really interesting interactions with Ivy.
Alfred?
Alfred does.
Yeah. No, I like Alfred's, like, royal interactions are good.
Yeah.
But whenever he's talking to someone normal or someone that he knows, he's like...
You're like, I don't want to hang out with you as a person.
Yeah.
You're just not a cool person.
And then, I don't know why, but, like, Amber and just rubbed me the wrong way.
Amber.
Yeah, he's like a lance knight. I've never used him.
Oh, yeah, I stopped using him.
Yeah.
I don't even remember him.
That's the thing, like, I feel like in Three Houses, even if you don't use a character, you know them.
Yeah.
Here, you're like, who is this?
Yeah, because if you don't use them, you don't ever get any more interactions with them.
No.
They're just gone.
So, Brandon, you had something to say about the story as well.
Yeah, what do you think about the story?
I mean, you wrote something.
I was trying to remember what the hell I did write, actually. Yeah, so the problem is I'm not very far into the story. But, so far what I've really gotten is, like, the corny-ass dialogue. So, for now, the story's like, oh, yeah, okay. So there's, like, a divine dragon.
And I will say...
Real, like, high fantasy, sort of a cliche.
Yes, it is very cliche. There's a lot of stuff in there, but there was one... Sometimes the cliche still hits, because there's one interaction where... Everything here's a spoiler for you, but, like...
Yeah.
You have to kill the current King of Brodia, because he's been, like, transformed.
Ooh. Yeah.
And if you... Like, as we talked about in the last episode, if you have the correct units attack the main bad guy, you'll have extra dialogue. So I, by chance, had the King of Brodia attack both of his sons in battle.
Gotta have the sons do it.
When you attack both of the sons are like... The first one who's the actual... The heir is the prince, the oldest prince. He's like, Father, was I a good son? I guess I should have asked you this way before and not now that you can't answer. I guess I'll never know. I'm sorry. And, like, hits him, and I'm like, oh my god. And the second one comes in, and he's like, I have to... And he's like, I'm sorry, Father. I have to kill you so that no one else gets to bear that burden, but I will.
So that Diamant doesn't have to live this way.
And I was just like, oh my god.
It was I will say that it is at it's corny all the way through, but it is at its corniest in the first, like, hour of the game.
It's also in its corniest in the Somnia.
Yes. Yeah. It can be really hard to do, like, exposition like that, especially for something like high fantasy.
Yeah.
Without it kind of seeming corny, even if it's done, like, pretty well. But on the other hand, I'm thinking, like, this is the sort of stuff even Shakespeare would have made fun of.
Yeah, it's not the most... The writing is never the most advanced, but this one, and because of, like, some characters, you don't... They like muscles. I don't know. I feel like... It's never been the most subtle writing, but this one's even less subtle than usual.
Right. Shakespeare would have written something like, "Oh, Father, was I a good son? Well, now I'll never know.
Yeah.
Verily thou couldst ask me while I still stand before thou plunge the dagger into my heart."
Well,
nope, never gonna know.
Well, no, you can't, because, like, the king has been transformed into, like, a corrupted monster.
Yeah, he's a zombie.
He's a zombie.
Okay, well, let's see that.
Yeah.
So that's what he's saying. Like, I should have asked you before you got zombified.
Yeah.
Like, I should have worked up the courage to talk to you about our feelings. Basically, is what he's saying.
I think the melodrama does help the corniness.
The melodrama. Once the melodrama hits, when you have, like, the Ivy and Hortensia stuff, that's. Like that stuff really.
Their relationship's really interesting too.
Hortensia is Ivy's sister,
but half sister. Due to an affair at court.
Yeah.
And so, like,
as you do.
Yeah. And so Hortensia's mother was, like, consistently mistreated at court for being the mistress. And
because Ivy's mom was the queen, and she was a horrible person.
Horrible to her because of it. And so a lot of them is, like, them reconciling the trauma of a family that, like, they didn't have any part in making those decisions for and just had to, like, pay the consequences of. It's real good. Yeah,
it's interesting.
It gets
and especially, like,
I think it helps it out.
There's an interesting twist where Hortensia is able to breach your defenses when you're not there, because she says that she's there with Ivy because, like, they're supposed to be close, but at one point they're on opposite sides. So there's some interesting stuff in there. Yeah, so this is what we're talking about. Sean says, I find myself more interested in the lives of the side characters than Alear, which is fair. But to be fair, that's how I felt in Three Houses as well.
They weren't side characters. Three Houses, that was the point.
No, every character.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Why can't I turn into a dragon? So, where we get to experience both of these side stories is in the Somniel. And we're going to get to my favorite part of this episode, I think.
What's the Somniel?
The Somniel is your hub world, and it's the third time Fire Emblem has had something like this. So they had, in Fire Emblem Fates, I believe, they had something called My Castle, which was an alternate dimension where you could like customize, using the DS touchscreen, customize your castle, which just...
So it was originally like just a gimmick.
Just a gimmick. And then you had Garreg Mach Monastery in the last game, which is where everything happens. And it makes sense because it's a school, so you get to do stuff in there. It's your hub world. You go back to that world. So you don't camp out usually. You go back to your school in between battles.
Yeah, and
right?
your battles are like field trips that your military school is taking.
Yes. And then in this one, it's kind of a mix of two, which is it doesn't have as much stuff as Garreg Mach did, but it also is more of a gimmick than just My Castle and Fates. So here's the activities you can do in this. In the Somniel, it exists in your universe, but you can only get it. It's like a hidden location. But beyond hidden, it's like a different realm almost, because you can only get there if the Divine Dragon like teleports you in.
It's like a pocket dimension.
It's like a pocket dimension.
Yeah. Now, and it should be noted, and in my defense, that this game has a menu system that you
more
can
than
access,
Three Houses.
More than Three Houses that you can access from the overworld, right? And the menu system has things like your inventory, the marketplace, buying and selling items, organizing your emblem rings, making sure you're all ready for battle. There is no need to visit the Somniel initially.
No, there's no need like you cannot go to the Somniel ever.
Ever.
Which is apparently like something that people do to like make the game more difficult for themselves, and which was something that John was doing unaware. So the Somniel,
So it turns out when you go there.
It's your army's hub, and it has a few things. Okay, so it has a plaza with like armory and weapon shops, right? It has a ring chamber. This you can't do in the map, which has, as we have mentioned before, the emblem ring polishing, which is probably the weirdest mechanic in this game. You can create other rings based on those characters, which you can then put on your minor characters and give them buffs that John wasn't doing also.
Wow.
Yeah. And you can inherit skills that John didn't know about. So your major emblem characters, right? So like, Marth, Roy, Ike, etc. They all have their own special like skills that special attributes that they give to characters when you have the ring equipped.
Right.
If you have enough skill points, you can buy that off of them and put that in your character forever without having to use them as a ring, and you still have that skill.
Even if you change rings.
So
that would be such a good ability.
That is one of the best abilities, because my units, my Alear has what I think is one of the most broken abilities in the game. It's called Momentum, and it means you do one more damage for every square you move on the map. So my first attack is typically doing like 8 more damage than it should. Every time.
Man.
Which is really good.
That would have made the game a lot easier.
It does help. And then you have the arena, which is a place where you can have your units battle each other 3 times to gain experience points. So when you go to the next battle, they are a higher level already.
Without risking their lives.
Without risking their lives. And in the arena, you also can have your units battle your bonds, so they can battle the like emblems, and gain bonds with them, so that when you put the ring on them, they're already at level 5.
Wow.
I know, right?
That's really good.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
See, I feel like this is the equivalent of playing through all of Resident Evil 4 without ever using the merchant.
Yes.
So John's up here, like, halfway through the game, is like, why is my starting pistol doing no damage anymore? It's like...
It's the equivalent of, like, John thought that playing Pokemon was hardcore Nuzlocke with no Pokemon centers. That's what we thought the Pokemon. That's what we thought the Pokemon was.
Potions are hard to find in this game. So yeah, I was talking about.
They've used the item store. It's like there's an item store.
And I was playing the game on hard. I wasn't playing on normal. And hard in Fire Emblem is like
it's hard,
significantly harder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, like the difficulty jumps are huge. If you look online, people talking, they have like tier lists for every unit for like normal and hard, and then they say like, note, this is not a tier list for maddening. Maddening is a different game.
Just a whole new set of rules. Yeah. So I went through like half of the game, and then Phil came to me and was like, there's things you can do in the Somniel. I was like, there's like fishing, and you can put new clothes on and stuff.
And I was like, no, you can make more rings. And he's like, what?
You can make more rings?
Yeah, because I asked him like, what rings are you giving to your minor characters? He's like, what? And I was like, what ring? Like you can...
Nothing. You don't give them minor rings. I've given the 6 rings that we have, and then the rest of them just gotta do their best. Because they can.
And then I was like, yeah, you can also train and gain buffs for your... And he's like, yeah, I know you can eat meals to up your bond. And I was like, yeah, but the meals give you buffs to every stat if you do it right. And he's like,
What?
that sounds pretty helpful. I was like, yeah.
John's like, man, this game is so hard. There's no aiming mechanic. And
Yeah.
they're like,
Chapters 17 through 19 have been much easier, I will say. Which, yes, I have the dumb. That is true. But also, aren't we all just a little bit impressed that I made it all the way to chapter
I
16?
mean, that's the thing, though, right? Achievements
Yeah.
and ignorance, right?
Yeah, oh, John didn't know about this too. So, like, this is my favorite. When you are battling in the world, you gain skill points, you gain gold, and you gain bond fragments. There's 3 currencies. Gold, you buy items,
Okay.
or donate money to get items from
I
somewhere
knew
else.
that one. Yeah, we've got the
you can
marketplace.
do that one on the map.
Yep.
Bond fragments, you used to up your bond with the emblem rings or make more rings, which you couldn't do.
Yeah, I was like, what are these bond fragments for? Oh, well, we'll
God.
figure it out.
And they're kind of like a finite, like, currency. They're not finite because you can do skirmishes forever, like you can do side battles forever, but
Sure.
if you only do the main battles, there's only a certain number of them that you're going to come across.
Right.
And then you have skill points, which you get by attacking and killing people that you can then use to inherit the skills from the emblems.
Who knew?
So I told John, like, to go to the bulletin board in the Somnio and click, like, R2, because then that lets you collect all your bond fragments, and John hadn't done it in this whole game. I have had, sometimes you have like 1,000 to 5,000 bond fragments. John did that and got 45,000.
Bond fragments that
At
were just
once.
stacking up
Sitting
throughout
there.
the game. I was like, oh man, I just thought, because they would pop up these little messages that were like, bring, use like Ike 3 times. And I was like, oh, neat. There's like an achievement menu somewhere where you could just go back and be like, these are the things I should... No, those were giving me like prizes every time I got one of those.
Yeah.
Just
They
sitting
give you like
back in the
50 to 100
Somniel.
to 500 every time. So now, what you can use those for is either make more rings, because you kind of want like 5 to 10 high-level like lottery rings you can pick from, because the minor rings are minor characters from each one's games.
Right.
So you kind of want 5 to 8 that are like pretty good, and then you want to use all those other bond fragments to like raise levels of bonds with people that you want their units to inherit those skills.
Yeah.
Right?
So,
Because you can pay bond fragments to have like one of your units gain a high level with the ring without ever having to use it to then inherit that skill.
yeah, so Pixel of Depth here, there's a psychological principle that says that sometimes what impacts learning new things is the old things still being in place and sort of interfering with your knowledge acquisition of new things. And I think this is one of those moments for me, because in the old games, the only way to up bonds was to put units next to each other in battle.
Yep.
And hope that they would like spend time next to each other to get along.
If they attacked or were attacked or did a healing thing, they would get points.
And so when this game worked that way, I was just like, that's the way Fire Emblem games worked. I didn't think to look any deeper, and this game has allowed things to make that easier, to make new bonds without putting them next to each other in battle, to help you and ease you along, and I was like, I mean, that's not the thing Fire Emblem does, so not worried about it.
Well, the main thing here is that, like, because you inheriting skills is the best feature. It's like the best mechanic in the game, because you can give someone a broken skill without having to have the emblem on them.
Yeah, equip
Right.
the ring.
So, equipping a ring. So, the reason you want to spend the bond fragments on this is you can take like, okay, so I only have one ring that has the speed boost ability, but I want 2 characters to have that ability, so I can up the bond with one of them artificially, buy that ability, and
Yeah.
keep the ring on someone else.
Well, it was
which is
what's
you need to
allowing
do.
for character customization. So we talked about last
Yeah.
episode how in the old game the way you would customize characters is halfway through the game there'd be a time jump, you'd get married, and you have kids that were customized
Yes.
combinations. The rings are allowing you to do that in this game, and I was just playing being like, man, there's a lot less customization in this game. You just don't have any choices. You just gotta sort of play with the characters you're given. But I'm here for it.
I wonder how similar to Maddening you were ultimately playing.
No, not even close.
Okay.
I bet Maddening is so.
Maddening, I would compare, from what I've read, I haven't tried it. Maddening, I would compare the jump from hard to Maddening, the same jump you do from like Nuzlocking against Cynthia to trying to play in the meta online, like Pokemon.
Yeah.
It's like a different game. Like you can prepare for an AI or for a computer,
Yeah.
but you can only do so much. Like when you get out or playing like high level Magic, where it's like I start my turn, I do all this kind of stuff, boom, you're dead. Like unless you have a specific counter for my strategy, you're dead.
Right.
Yeah.
In Maddening, from what I understand, there's 1 or 2 ways to get through every map, and
To
if you
win the
don't
map.
do one of those 1 or 2 ways, you will not win that map.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, yeah, so like I think the jump from normal to hard is the Baldur's Gate jump from like normal to tactician,
Okay.
and then the jump from hard to maddening is the jump from like tactician to if you were playing online against other people.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was about to say, not tactician to honor. Honor is actually not that much harder.
Yeah, so like it would be tactician to like playing against ranked people online, like all the time.
Yeah, it becomes more of a
Gotcha.
puzzle game than it is like a strategy game
Yeah,
because there's just one or two ways through.
Yeah. There's also a thing called the Wyvern Ride. Have you done the Wyvern Ride?
I have not, but
Wyvern Ride
I
is fun.
now see it that I've been introduced
So
to.
the Wyvern Ride is fun because it's basically a minigame where you just fly on the Wyvern and you just like shoot targets, which doesn't really make a lot of sense because you're shooting laser beams, and I'm like, why
Sure.
can't I use this in battle?
To shoot lasers. Wait,
Shoot-
can. You're
yeah,
throwing
definitely.
giant fireballs.
No, but you'll see. It's literal lasers, but you can have. There's a tiny cat in the Somnial. You'll like this. That you can like pet and customize, and it can like help you. It like runs around after you in the Somnial, right?
Where is it?
It's like all the way down. You'll see it when
You can adopt all the cats in the world
Yes.
into your summon.
But you can also. This cat is like a special cat.
I have a plan.
But he's not really a cat. He's like a creature.
yeah.
But he's real cute.
I have
and
a plan.
He will run around behind you, and it's super cute. But if you can choose to do activities with him helping you. So like, if you're doing the strength training, which gives you a boost to your stats in the next battle, if you mistime a click because there's like a mini game, he'll like help you and stop you from mistiming a click. Or if you're fishing, he does the same thing.
Oh, nice.
In Wyvern Ride, okay, he rides on the face of the wyvern. So he's on the top. It's you on the wyvern, and he's
With
on
the
the
cat
top.
there.
The cat's on the top of the wyvern's head, and he will like occasionally shoot targets for you. It's really helpful, and he's just literally on top. It's hilarious. So like the more you get to know units, the more you like get information on like a reference page for them. So I went to the reference page for the cat, which I'm not saying their name because you get to name them.
Okay.
Right, so mine's called Mona because of Persona 5.
Lovely. Yeah. More
But
good.
I took a picture of what their last page says, and it's like one of the saddest things I've ever read. Hold on. So here we go. First of all, it has some information. So like first met, whatever. Height, tall as a loaf of bread. Weight, heavy as 2 peaches. Because they all have like actual. Every single unit has actual measurements.
The weights
and
and heights,
for this, the cat is not like this, right? And then if you like get your bond up with this thing, all the way in, right? It says personality: gentle, spirited, likes a leer, soft things, butterflies, warm things, try new foods. Dislikes: how everyone it's ever known up until now goes away eventually.
So it's an immortal cat.
Yeah, it's an immortal cat.
Amazing.
It's like it's a spirit of the Somnial. Yeah.
Love it.
Oh.
I know, he's real cute. Yeah. So, when I read that, I had a real sad moment, and I was like, oh my, this thing just lives here forever.
So after you unlocked me to the world of the Somniel and all the options that we have, and
Have you used the
there's-
Ancient Well yet?
There's more. I haven't used it yet, but I know there is now an ancient well in the Somniel. I went to go exercise, and the exercise is a fun little mini game where like you do push-ups to a beat, to a time, and if you do them right, you get.
They all have like push-ups, sit-ups, and squats. All have different types of beat mini games. Yeah.
My weirdness about this is that when they exercise, they all wear exercise clothes.
Yes.
And not like ye old fantasy. It's like total immersion break. They all wear like gym shorts and like basketball jerseys.
It's like real like fashion forward too, because they're all wearing like they're all wearing like a thermal and like a crop on top.
Yep,
that's
it's
real,
very like
colorful.
Adidas, Under Armour
style.
style. And they're just not doing these workouts.
But they're still usually wearing like heels if you pay attention. They're still wearing like straight up shoes.
Of course they are.
Yeah.
Can't let them out of their heels.
So it's a real like immersion break for sure. But it's again a reason for you to go to the boutique and customize your characters. Like and give them like because you can go to the boutique and buy like traditional clothing. You can also of course buy swimsuits.
But they
and
only
have all
wear
their
this
characters
in the
in swimsuits if
Somniel,
you
right?
want.
Or is
Yeah,
that in
of
battle?
course.
They only wear it in the Somniel.
Yeah.
Yeah, in battle they wear their units' clothing. So like if you upgrade a unit, they'll change their armor.
It's too bad. I would like to see Alira charging into battle in nothing but swim shorts.
Yeah,
Just being like,
you
"Ah!"
can. You can in other games, I think. You can in Persona 5.
Oh
You
yeah.
eventually unlock swim trunks, and you can they just wear them. It's the opposite of Persona 5. Like they wear them in battle, and in real life they wear normal
Clothes, yeah, to stop the
Yeah.
cutscenes from having to.
So I use everything in the Somniel. Every time I go there, I fish. I do everything because everything gives you at least bond fragments.
You could easily spend an hour and a half between every map.
If you're quick
Going
about
around.
it, it's more like an hour. But yeah, it can take a while. Which is why I told John, I was like, man, my chapters are taking so long because I'm in the Somniel for like an hour and a half, and he's like, what? why are you going to the Somnial? And I was like,
cooking meals for an hour and a half.
wait, what about, wait, and then that's when I was like, what about the bond ring? He's like, what bond ring?
What bond rings? I was like, yeah, it's a nice little like temple, but I'm not gonna sit by the water and look at the beautiful graphics for an hour.
It's like, oh man, I never looked through this door.
You can actually skip this, like, because you know how you can do little support stuff.
Yeah.
You can skip them. You can like, click do it and just show me the results. You don't have to watch them, John. Okay, so we're getting to the end here. I just want to transition to our strategy, what we're using now.
Oh yeah.
So, John, I'll let you go first, since I've been going first usually this episode.
Yeah, let's talk military tactics.
Yeah.
So, and hopefully this will be some advice for like Brandon or how the game is played.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of different ways to play Fire Emblem, a lot of different like strategies to go with, because you, out of your roster of like 20 to 30 characters,
So many characters.
you get to choose somewhere between 8 and 12.
Yeah.
Per map, right? And so you need a strategy that work with 8 or 12 characters. So what I tend to do is
And depending on, like, if the map has a lot of mages or a lot of archers and stuff.
Yeah, and so you can't change things out if you look and you're like, oh my goodness, there's all these mages. Let's take an extra Pegasus Knight.
Yeah.
Because they're really good against mages, have high resistance. But typically what I do is I do sort of like a Persian strategy. So Persia is famous for having these like walls of shields and then a bunch of archers. If any of you have ever seen the opening of the movie Alexander, they do a really good job of showcasing this. But I do the same thing. So I put these heavy front shield bearers out front, so that if anything hits them, it just goes tink 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 and does 0 damage.
Yeah.
Unless it's a mage.
Yeah.
And then I have archers and mages behind them, because they can shoot more than one square, and maybe occasionally 3, now that we've learned about bond rings.
I got a really good bond ring to give my archer a +1 range.
Nice.
It's huge.
That's huge.
Range and movement is the best stats in the game, yeah.
Hands down.
Yeah.
And then everybody else, I have high movement people, so cavalry basically. But my cavalry are usually like dragon riders, or Pegasus riders, or griffin riders, or wolf knights. They ride on a lot of different creatures in this game.
Not horses, not just horses.
Not just horses.
Yeah.
You can have horse riders as well, so that they can come around and flank from the sides. So I march in like a column, take all the brunt force on the top 3 guys. The archers and mages shoot out from behind, and then when something comes to threaten the archers or the mages, then the cavalry breaks out and does sort of like a flanking pattern around the side. It's been real successful so far, except on maps where you start surrounded.
Or really small maps.
Or really small maps. It gets really difficult, because in that case, like, you need to form some sort of phalanx or shield wall all around you, and I don't have that. My shield wall is one-sided. And so if anybody
you don't have enough characters that are shields in the first place to do that.
To make, you'll never have enough strategy to make like a Tortola formation, like a shields on 4 sides, which means you're left with like one directional, which makes those maps where you're surrounded really hard. But Phil's strategy solves that.
My strategy, I'm playing on normal, so I don't know how it would work as well on hard, because I don't know what they up on hard. But my strategy is, I used to have like just a straight up like phalanx with a leer and a couple of Avo people up front and my shield next to them. Right. And then some people pick in like my cavalry units, flying units on the sides, like closing off the phalanx basically.
Sure.
But now that I have 4 units that are such high avoidance that I can put them in the middle of anyone and they will get hit maybe once in a turn, and it's never enough that I can't heal them. So I have a group that has all of my units, which is a couple of tanks, a couple of mages, and an archer, and 2 of these high avoidance units that go ahead because they also have high movement. So they typically go ahead, draw fire, and then my other units come back and like group them, basically like overwhelm them with more people.
Yeah, it's like a real guerrilla warfare tactic.
So I have one unit that still moves with a phalanx of like 6 to 9 characters, and then I have one 3 to 4 guerrilla group that is a leer. Typically Yunaka, because she's the worst of the high avoidance ones, so I bring her with her. Right. Because Marin and Kagetsu, the other 2 of high avoidance, they can just go their own thing, right? Yeah. And then I bring Ivy, who's a mage healer. She kind of sits behind, and then if a leer and Yunaka can't kill a unit, she can hit from far away, or heal if I need to. But because there's such high avoidance, I break the map into 2, and I use like where most of the enemies are. I bring my phalanx with my 2 high avoidance units, like luring people out, and then I overwhelm them with the ones in the back. And then the guerrilla group is like collecting items, doing other stuff in other ways, and just like going into the like enemy's den basically and being like, hit me. I dare you.
Yeah, well, and
they don't.
this strategy relies on something that I hadn't thought of doing before, which is really smart. That I think I didn't think of doing because I haven't had weapon permanence before.
Yeah.
But so what Phil does is instead of giving his units like perfect weapons, like I tend to give my units like the best weapons they can get, right? The legendary weapons, the super powerful weapons. Phil gives them like the slim lances and the wooden swords because they are low attack but high avoidance. So it ups the avoidance on your character, and then he upgrades them. So the attack gets high, but the avoidance stays ultra high as well.
So I only upgrade them to the point, because when you upgrade them at one point, even if you're upgrading the slim lens, they also go up in weight.
Right.
I don't upgrade them. I only upgrade them to the point before the weight goes up.
Yeah.
And then I build those units with like speed buffs. That means that whenever they attack, they're because Avo like is exponentially increased however much higher your speed is. So like my Lear's avoidance base is 102.
It's nonsense. Things just can't hit him. And it's actually really brilliant because in Fire Emblem lot, one of the things that I struggle with, because all my units are moving together as this cohesive group, there's frequently like side objectives or secondary objectives. They're like, kill this general, but also he's setting these houses on fire, so try to save these people while you're doing that. Or there's a treasure chest over here, and a thief is going to steal it. Get to it before the thief steals it. So your guerrilla group really allows like mobility.
My guerrilla group does that. And then in on the small maps or the maps you start in the middle, I can move my high avoidance units to like choke points and just have them sit there because that draws out people, so then I can like archer from the back, but also they will avoid most hits. Because most people that come to attack them, honestly, most people that come to attack my units have 0 hit.
Yeah, so for those of you that haven't played Fire Emblem, or like even just as advice for Brandon, I would say that like the core consideration of Fire Emblem, the thing that like when you're playing that you have to really worry about, is engaging intentionally and purposefully.
Yeah, you should be controlling all the engagement.
You have to control every single one. Like the worst thing that can happen to you in the game is having 3 people come for you that you didn't know were going to come for you last turn, right? And so like constantly positioning a high avo or a high defense unit in a position that's going to draw 3 other units into them, so that then your guys can come and engage first.
Yeah, and overwhelm.
That's like the key to the game.
So there's a mechanic in the game. I think if you hover over a unit and press A, it will give you their range of action and where they can attack.
Right.
So typically I'll put that on like the strongest unit, just so I always know how much they can move. But like if I'm moving these guerrilla groups, I will click on either of them or the closest thing and be like, okay, so where do I have to move so I can get just in their range, but they have to move as far as possible to come to get me, and then I can move everyone else in once they try to attack me, and I avoid most hits.
Yeah, so you can keep the rest of your units right behind the enemy lines. Put your strongest or most defensive unit just in the enemy lines, so that then after the enemy has made their move and attacked your guy once and done some damage, you can heal your guy and overwhelm with the others.
Or avoid, hopefully.
I didn't even think about it as a possibility.
But one thing I also do is like I also make sure to upgrade all the. If I can upgrade a crit for a weapon, I will.
Crit's
so like
great.
My Diamant, who's like a defensive like kind of powerhouse, his axe gives him a 49 chance of critting. So he's critting once every turn.
And crit, I think, triples the damage. Yeah. So
and he hits really hard because it's a big unit, so he's tripling like 30 attack already. He usually kills things if he crits.
So I prioritize crit with my archers because the archers can fire 2 to 3 times.
Yes.
And so even if you have
like
a 30%,
it's
it's guaranteed almost 100 statistically.
Yeah, it's great. Critting is the units that come with like their base crit levels, or I think it's dexterity, which is the crit, is huge. So like Marin, Alchris, those guys that have high dexterity. Luck is avoiding criticals. Dexterity is giving criticals. And speed is how fast you move, like how and depending on the speed differential, you get to move twice if they only get to move once, or sometimes 3 times.
Or 1 to 1. Yeah.
Because I've fought like Emblem Marth in like the little arena thing. Emblem Marth will move 3 times for 1.
Yeah, he's real fast.
Because he's real fast. Yeah. So yeah, my strategy is basically like if you got into a Pokemon battle and my Pokemon was already minimized 3 times and agility 5 times. That's my strategy.
Screw you.
It's a good strategy.
It's the same thing as John does, right? But it's like, because he's in hard, he can't necessarily do the guerrilla group, but he's putting defense in there to lure people out. I put avoidance in there to lure people out.
Right. I'm raising defense for sure.
Yeah.
As opposed to avoidance.
So Brandon's team is still pretty stock, but is there anything that you're going to try to do based on what we have talked about?
Well, this was already my plan. I want to freaking archer. Because right now...
Etty's terrible. You're gonna get
the
Etty.
first archer you get is bad.
Is very bad. And also, she's bad, and she should feel bad. But also, she doesn't have a longbow, so her range is like 2, which is nothing for an archer.
You'll be better off with... Your mages will be your archers for the early part of the game.
Lame. So right now I've got like 1 cavalry, 1 tank, 1 support, 1 mage. And I've really been wanting more ranged attacks because I definitely like mid to long range combat as opposed to like melee. And so that's what I've really been looking forward to is that area denial with ranged attacks.
Yep.
Because I love doing that. I love like positioning units such that it's like, okay, anything that steps on this square is dead.
You can also look at reclassing, which isn't super intuitive in this game. It is in 3 houses, but like you can you get Eunuch kind of early, and you can reclass it into an archer pretty easily. And there's a couple of units in there that you can like reclass into mages. Like Frem can be a mage.
Yep.
Instead of just like a healer, so you can give her like actual things that do mage damage. But yeah, until you get Alchrist, and I want to say like, Caecilian is fine, but until you get Alchrist, you won't have a reliable like long range damage dealer.
I think that one of the big changes for you from Civ in sort of the tactics that you have is that in this game, generally speaking, not always, you are forced into the position of an aggressor.
Yeah.
So like they have a person sitting on a hill, you have to claim that hill, and so it's hard. You can't really ever set up like kill boxes typically.
Well, yeah, it's as John was saying. You should be the aggressor, but by controlling every engagement.
Yeah.
Right. So like you want to move. Ideally, you're always only moving just into their attack range or just outside, hoping that they move towards you.
Yep.
You don't want to just put like 2 or 3 units that can be attacked at once, because if they all choose to attack one, they're probably going to die. Unless there are special circumstances like super high defense or super high avoidance.
And I don't know how it is on normal, but I will say the AI is smart enough that on hard, they'll pick the weakest unit and kill it intentionally.
Yeah, they will gang up typically. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So even if it says like these 3 guys could all attack any of your 3 guys, they will always choose to pick whoever the weakest
or
is.
the one that
go
can't
with
counter, for example.
Gotcha.
So like
or
if you
they'll
have
break them. Yeah.
Yeah, if you have an archer that doesn't have short range bows, which there is one, they'll all attack the archer from short range because they can't attack them back.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So the AI
it's fairly smart.
They will hit some. They will kill some units. That's why you have the time crystal. Use it. But yeah, so we talked about we'll talk more about this next episode where you're talking about how like typically you're the aggressor. And my favorite map in this game, and maybe my favorite map ever, is one of you're not the aggressor.
You're not the aggressor.
But we'll talk more about that in the next episode as we're running out of time here. But so our first impressions here, as you can see, I'm dangerously into it.
So
I'm
good.
spending like an hour and a half in the support in the Barbie's castle portion, basically. And all my units are customized and have plans for deferred customization. I'm trying to decide like how much thought I want to put into I want to, but how much am I ready to commit 3 hours of writing stuff down of what I want to do, basically.
Is it time to break out the Persona 4 spreadsheets?
Yeah.
Yep.
It is more cumbersome to do that in this game, though. That's why I need to bring out a spreadsheet, because in 3 Houses they showed you everything that could happen very clearly. And you could plan out for what you wanted very clearly. Now it's kind of like,
the menus are not
a bunch
as
of classes.
Yeah.
Do you want this? I was like, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm really enjoying it. It's just I forgot how time consuming it can be. Not the battles are long, but I forgot how time consuming it can be to just inventory strategy. Yeah.
Yeah.
John, your first impressions.
I mean, I've said it before when we were getting into playing this, because I had played it a little bit earlier, that this is a Fire Emblem game for Fire Emblem people.
Yes.
Both in the fact that it's rehashing all this nostalgia from the series, it's also going back to sort of its roots, and it's like a very classic traditional Fire Emblem game, which is great. I think that's pros and cons. I think that it feels like Fire Emblem. It's great for Fire Emblem. Cons are the menus expect you to know everything that you could possibly do and do it excellently. Their little tutorial windows will pop up, but they only tutorialize 10% of what is possible.
And the mechanic itself, they don't tutorialize for you to do this the best way, you have to go to this menu to take a look at your unit stats, see what's going to upgrade, so you can see what classes you want to use. How do you even get a seal for a class? They don't tell you that kind of stuff.
So I would say first impressions are that it holds up to what it's trying to be.
Fair enough.
As a Fire Emblem game, it's being a very successful Fire Emblem game, but it's not my first Fire Emblem.
Yeah, it's not. No.
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Start with
Brandon.
this one. Yeah. Brandon likes this stuff. So,
Brandon likes this stuff, so he'll be into it.
Yeah.
Just know that the menus are not like, especially the class upgrading stuff is
Obtuse.
obtuse. It's not just clunky. It's like difficult to work with.
Okay.
Your first impressions, Brandon?
Well, yeah, that this may not be Baby's first Fire Emblem game, but I'm still willing to give the game a completely fair shake. Yes, some of it's corny, but I kind of still enjoy moving units around on a map. Turns out that one pretty much transfers to most things for me.
Yeah,
It's
pretty fun.
It remains to be seen, really, largely, but I'm going to give it a go.
Brandon's making a commitment right here on air.
No,
to
wait,
play
hang
at
on.
least
Hang
2
on,
hours
hang
a
on,
night.
Hang on. Fine.
That's what I do.
I think
No, wait, no. I've got a book deadline.
Commitment. He said it out loud. It's a binding verbal
You heard it
contract.
here.
So that was our first impressions episode of Fire Emblem Engage. I almost had 3 houses. So we'll meet again in 3 weeks. We'll talk about our full spoiler review of the game. We'll hopefully get through the whole game.
Talk about story. I think.
Talk about the story. Talk about our favorite maps and the emblems themselves and that kind of stuff.
Cool.
Talk about how John missed the entire, second level of the game.
Yeah, talk about how John. You haven't been using the underground Somniel?
Turns out it's so easy.
So until then, I'm Professor Phil Chavot. He's Professor Brandon West, and he's Professor John Adams. And together we are professors who play video games. And we will see you in a few weeks.
Thanks. Bye.